Finally, we reached the last part of our project, and that's the call to action section with the booking button in it. And so in this lecture, you will learn how to make that button because it has yet another really cool and modern hover effect on it. So let's get back to work. So that here is the call to action section that we're gonna code now. So it has this text here, which is an H2 element, and then this button that I was talking about. But let's for now take care of the overall formatting of the section and of this heading element here. Okay? So this here is probably the, well, actually it's not. So this is the detail. And so right here is where we have to put our call to action section. So a div with the CTA class, so short for call to action. So in here we have the H2, which I'm going to call CTA book now. And then the text that's in here is good news. We have 4 free rooms for your selected dates. So just this. And then after that, we have our button, which I'm simply calling BTN. All right. And now in here, for now, I'm just going to put some text. So only 4 rooms left, but we're going to have to change that later. And I'm going to explain you why by then. So for now, let's just format here or CTA element. So down here, all the way down here. And let's get this one here. So call to action. And I want to start with a padding of 3.5 rem top and bottom. And also let's center the text here. So text align to center, because that will automatically center the H2 element as well as the button. Okay, and so let's now format that H2. So book now. And that one has a text transform of uppercase. And actually let's start with the font size. So 1.2 rem. And the font weight of 300. And then also a margin to the bottom of 2.5. All right, let's check that. And here we go. Okay, so you see that everything is centered. And well, of course, this text here is way too small. Let's make it 1.5. And so here we go. And now we have to style this bottom here, of course. So how do we do that? And for that, let's take a look here at the example so that I can explain you what's actually going on. So the trick to this here is to basically design the button like this and then put 2 elements in there. One that says book now. Okay, so the text that we have here, and then another one that says only 4 rooms left. And as soon as we hover the button, well, they both slide down a little bit. And when we then hover out, of course, they move back up. So that's exactly what happens. So take a look. So you saw that? The book now moves down and the other text also moves down. So you saw that? And so that's what we have to do. So again, we have the button outside, and then in there we have 2 elements, one for each part of the text, which then move down as we hover. Okay, so let's do that. And I'm going to call the first one button visible and the second one button hidden. So I'm simply using a span element here. So button visible, saying book now, and then button invisible. And that's where this text here goes. So let's style that now. Actually, let's first change the font size here because I thought it was still way too small. Okay. And okay. So now the button. And so now the visible part. And of course the invisible part. So let's start with the simple stuff. So the font size of 1.5 rem. Of course, remove the border. also set the font weight to 300 and also to uppercase. And then give it a nice huge border radius. Okay, so that it's rounded at the sides. Next, I also want to change the background, and that should be that gradient that you saw, right? So it was a gradient from our light primary color to the dark one. And so, of course, linear gradient to the right side. And I don't know why this is always happening. So this is how it should be. So going from the light color to the darker one. All right. And finally, the color of the button, of course, should then be white. All right. So let's take a first look at that. All right. So it's starting to look a bit like our real example. Now, we're ready to start the visible part. So first of all, since it's a span, it's an inline element, but we want it as an inline block. So in order that we can use padding in there, okay? So we want a padding at the top and the right side. So 2 rem, top and bottom, and then let's put a huge length for left and right, like 7.5 rem, okay? And that's because it's this padding here that is going to define the size of the button, okay? So let's just take a look at that again. And okay, so now this here is our visible part, remember? So book now is the visible and the hidden part should be that one, okay? So let's now take care of that. And remember that this here should basically be here on top so that when we hover the button, it can move down here to the center. Okay, and so we will make this a completely different element that's out of the button in the initial state. Okay, so let's do that. Make it an inline block as well. And then we're going to use absolute positioning. Okay, so that we can really put it outside of our button. Okay, so from the left, it should be 0. And from the top, well, what we have to do is to set it to minus 100%. And what that's going to do is that it's going to move up exactly the size of the element. So basically, if this element is like 50 pixels high, it will move up 100% of that. And so 50 pixels. Okay. Now we also need to give it a padding. And it should be the same padding as this one here. Okay. So 2 rem and 7.5. And that's actually not really accurate, but I'm going to leave it at this here so that I can show you what happens if we do it like this. Okay. Now, actually, what I should also do here is to give it a height and a width of 100% so that it has the height and the width of the parent element once again. So height 100% and width 100%. So let's take a look at that now. And so probably it should be somewhere up there now. So let's inspect that. And actually it's somewhere completely different. And that's because we didn't specify position on the parent. So I don't know where it really is, but what I know is that it's gone. And so in here we should now set position to relative, of course. Never forget that. Okay, and so right now, this is where the invisible element is, so exactly where we want it to be. Now you see that actually the word left is here, so it comes out of the button, and that's because it doesn't have enough space, okay? So if we remove this part here, like set it to 0, then it should have enough space to fit all the content, okay? And so that's what I was saying, that padding wouldn't work, but that I would explain to you later why it wouldn't work. And actually this is not where I have to change, but here. All right. So that's better. And actually you can see it here. Well, not really, but imagine that I changed the color. So let's like put it to red. And then of course you see that the text is here. Okay. And so we should probably hide that part, right? So how can we do that? Well, actually the best way of doing that is to set overflow to hidden. Okay, because that element is outside of the button, and so it's an overflown element, and if we set overflow to hidden here, then it will simply disappear. Okay, and so now it is gone. So actually we are ready to already implement the functionality now. So when we hover the button, what do we want to happen? Well, we want something to happen to the visible, of course. And to the invisible. So what should happen with the invisible element? Remember that right now it is at top minus 100%. So what is the position where it would be completely visible? Well, it's just top 0, right? And so that's all we have to do. Top 0. Okay? And then of course we want to have a transition here. All in 2 seconds, so 0.2 seconds. So let's take a look at that. And well, not a lot is happening actually. So let's take a look at why that is happening. So let's use here the DevTools and set it to hover. And so what's happening here with the invisible? And actually I don't have any hover state here. And so maybe something went wrong. But actually everything should be correct. So let's take a look at the converted CSS. And you see that we already have a lot of CSS written. And here is the selector that we just wrote. And actually that's completely incorrect. Okay, so that's not how we can do it. So let's simply put it in here, because that's actually the way it should be done. So that was just a mistake. Okay, and then the same thing for invisible. Let's get rid of that. And of that. And so top 0. And let's try that again. And so now you see that it's moving down right into the middle of the button. And as we move out, well, it doesn't go away. Let's reload this. And yeah, so now it's working. As we hover out, it goes away again. Okay, and so now all we have to do is to do something similar with the visible. But in this case, we're not going to use top because we actually didn't use absolute positioning on it. So instead, we're going to do transform and simply translate it down. So translate y, so in the y direction, and 100% of its height. And actually we didn't define its height, so we should probably just do the same as this one here. And then also put a transition. And I'm seeing here that we have a lot of repeated code. So let's simply do it like this. So select all of the child elements. And then all of this here is repeated, such as this one here. So of course we want the transition to happen on both. So a little refactoring in order to make our code better. Okay, so again, what happens here is that this part, the visible part, will translate 100% of its height down. Okay, and so with this, it should already be working pretty well. And yeah, it is. So that is the functionality that we were looking for, right? Now the only difference to the original is that we also changed the gradient from one side to the other. So let's do that as well. So let's just put it here. So it went to the right, and now we can simply change it to the left. All right, and the final thing is the focus. So remember the focus on the inline button? Well, here in this button, we're going to do the exact same thing. So outline, none, but instead of having that outline, we have the animation that we already coded, and it's called pulsate. We want it to run for 1 second and basically forever, so infinite. And with that, we should be ready. So you saw that the gradient changed, and it's not transitioning actually, and that's because transition doesn't work for background images, and so it also doesn't work for gradients. But it doesn't really matter because with the other animation that we have going on here, you don't even really notice that, okay? Okay, and the last thing is to now click it, and then you see the pulsating animation. And so it looks like it's really calling you, please click me, okay? So that's the purpose of this animation. And this here, of course, keeps working. And let's just add a cursor here. So that's also missing. So cursor, a pointer. Okay. And so with that, we are actually done. So let's compare it. And it looks the same, except that the text here is a bit smaller, but that doesn't really matter. Okay. So great. We are ready with this project, at least for the non-responsive part. So right now, if we try to decrease this, so let's go here to the mobile, then it's not going to do a really good job to adapt to mobile screens, for example. Okay, so as we get smaller, it starts looking like this. And so that's what we have to fix over the next couple of lectures. Okay, but for now, this is still great. So congratulations for finishing this project and for learning everything you learned about Flexbox in this section. And actually not only Flexbox. So I also showed you a couple of other cool tricks and techniques here in this section, but of course the main focus was on Flexbox. And so I hope you really mastered that by now. So project is finished. Over the next couple of lectures, as I was saying, we will take care of writing some media queries in order to make everything super responsive here and adapt it to mobile and tablets.